Let's be honest. When you think of world-beating, terrifying fighter jets, you probably don't think of Sweden. You think of America with its budgets the size of a small galaxy. You think of Russia with its penchant for building things that look like they were designed to end the world. Sweden, they give us sensible cars, flat-packed furniture that tests the limits of human sanity, and meatballs. So when Saab, the people who brought you the quirky car your university professor drove, announced they had built a world-class fighter jet, the world's military bigwigs had a bit of a chuckle. They looked at the Gripen and it was small. It was dinky. It had one engine. The experts sitting in their leatherback chairs in Washington and Moscow scoffed. They pointed at its diminutive frame and its single Volvo engine. Yes, that Volvo. And they dismissed it. It was like bringing a go-kart to a Formula One race. The Gripen, they said, was a Eurocanard, a cute little design exercise for a country that hadn't been to war in 200 years. It was designed to potter around the Swedish coastline, maybe scare a few lost Russian submarines, and then land on a motorway for a cup of tea. It wasn't a serious instrument of power. It was a budget fighter for a budget air force. They couldn't have been more wrong. What these so-called experts failed to grasp was the sheer, unadulterated genius of Swedish thinking. The Swedes weren't trying to build the biggest jet. They weren't trying to build the fastest jet or the most expensive jet. They were building the smartest jet. They designed the Gripen not for a parade ground, but for the brutal reality of a potential war against a much larger enemy. It had to be cheap to fly, easy to maintain, and capable of being operated by a handful of conscripts from a frozen stretch of country road. They weren't building a show pony. They were forging a glinting, razor-sharp Viking axe, a tool designed with a single, brutal purpose. And so the world continued to patronize it. The Gripen was seen as a plucky, second-tier option for countries that couldn't afford the real jets. It was the sensible hatchback in a world of supercars. The narrative was set. Nice try, Sweden, but leave the serious business of air dominance to the big boys. The Gripen was relegated to the footnotes of aviation magazines, a curiosity that confirmed the established order. But deep in the Scandinavian forests, the little fighter was waiting. It was biding its time, ready to deliver a shock that would echo through the entire military-industrial complex. The toe was about to bite back. Now, on the other side of the planet, America was doing what America does best, spending an absolutely biblical amount of money on something astonishing. This was the F-35 Lightning II. It wasn't just a fighter jet, it was a statement. It was a flying supercomputer wrapped in the most advanced stealth materials known to man. It cost more than the entire GDP of some small nations and was heralded as the single most advanced piece of military hardware ever conceived. The F-35 was designed to be the beginning and the end of any argument. It was the undisputed king, the heavyweight champion of the skies before it had even thrown a proper punch. This jet was the pinnacle of ambition. It could be a conventional fighter, a vertical takeoff and landing jump jet for the Marines, and a carrier-based brawler for the Navy. It promised to see everything while being seen by nothing. Its helmet alone cost more than a Ferrari and allowed the pilot to see through the floor of his own aircraft. The F-35 was the sledgehammer to everyone else's nut. It was so packed with sensors, data links, and revolutionary technology that flying it was said to be less about dogfighting and more about managing a vast network of information. It was the future, and everyone knew it. The world looked on in awe. Allies lined up, checkbooks in hand, desperate to get a piece of this technological marvel. To own the F-35 was to have a seat at the top table. It was a symbol of power, an undeniable declaration that your Air Force was part of the Premier League. Pilots who flew it spoke of its gods, a view of the battlefield, its ability to engage targets long before the enemy even knew a battle had started. The narrative was simple and intoxicating. The F-35 had made the traditional dogfight obsolete. Why would you need to turn and burn when you could shoot down your opponent from 50 miles away, completely unseen? In every way, the F-35 was the philosophical opposite of the Gripen. One was a Swiss Army knife forged from gold and diamonds, designed to do everything for everyone at a staggering cost. The other was a simple, brutally effective stiletto knife. The moment of truth arrived not in a real war, thankfully, but in the next best thing, a high-stakes, multinational air combat exercise. These events are where pilots and their machines are pushed to the limit, a place where reputations are made and broken. During one such exercise, the now legendary Red Flag in the Nevada desert, the plucky Swedish Gripen found itself on the schedule to go up against the titans of the sky, including the F-35. To the American pilots, this was probably seen as a light sparring session, a chance to show the smaller nations what their billion-dollar baby could do. It was David versus Goliath. Only Goliath was invisible and could throw rocks from the next county. Imagine the scene, the vast, empty expanse of the American desert. On one side, the F-35, the most expensive weapons system in history. On the other, the Gripen, the little jet from the land of IKEA and ABBA, an aircraft that many in the room still consider to be in a lower league. The briefing rooms must have been an interesting mix of quiet Swedish confidence and American bravado. The fight was on. The rules of engagement in these mock battles are designed to simulate real combat as closely as possible. It's not just about speed and agility. It's about tactics, electronic warfare, and situational awareness. The F-35's entire doctrine was built around using its stealth and advanced sensors to achieve the first look and the first shot. The goal was to kill the Gripen before the Swedish pilot even knew the F-35 was there. For the Gripen, the challenge was immense. It had to survive that first invisible salvo and somehow find a way to turn the tables on an opponent it couldn't see. For the Swedes, this wasn't just another training sortie. This was a chance to prove that their entire design philosophy wasn't just a cost-saving measure, but a genuine strategic advantage. They knew their aircraft. They knew it was light on its feet like a prize boxer. They knew it had one of the most sophisticated electronic warfare suites in the world, specifically designed to counter the sort of threats the F-35 represented. They weren't flying in with a sense of dread. They were flying in with a plan. A very clever, very Swedish plan. The world was about to find out what happens when you underestimate the quiet one in the corner. When the mock battle began, the F-35 did exactly what it was designed to do. It used its stealth to remain hidden, a ghost in the machine. But the Gripen pilots weren't just flying blind. They had a secret weapon, a revolutionary data link system, and a highly advanced electronic warfare suite. They avoided relying on their own radar, which would be like trying to spot a black cat in a coal cellar. Instead, they chose a different tactic. They used the Gripen's electronic warfare system not just for defense but for offense, creating a digital smokescreen to jam the F-35's sensors while hunting for the faintest electronic whisper from the American jet. Suddenly, the F-35's greatest strength, its constant data stream meant to give it total awareness, became its weakness. It became a trail of breadcrumbs for the Swedish hunters. Flying low and fast, using the terrain for cover, the Gripen pilots slipped inside the F-35's sensor bubble. The duel shifted from a long-range missile exchange to a close-quarters knife fight, exactly where the big, heavy F-35 didn't want to be. The American jet was dragged into a boxer's ring, while the nimble Swede prepared to dance. It was a stunning reversal. In the chaos of the dogfight, the Gripen's design brilliance shone through. Its Delta canard layout allowed it to pull razor-tight turns with brutal quickness. The F-35, carrying the weight of its multi-role constraints and internal weapons bays, simply wasn't as nimble. The Gripen pilots used that agility advantage to get on the F-35's tail for the kill shot. For all its technology and all its cost, the F-35 found itself in the crosshairs of the little jet that could. The Wasp was on the back of the beat, stinger out. The results reported from the exercise were staggering. Across multiple engagements, the toy fighter didn't just survive, it won. It outmaneuvered, outhot, and killed the F-35. These reports sent shockwaves through the aviation community. The invincible jet had been beaten by the sensible Swede. And it wasn't a fluke. The reaction was, to put it mildly, electric. Military analysts who had spent years extolling the virtues of the F-35 were suddenly very quiet. Aviation forums exploded with debate. How could this be? How could the dinky little Saab, the budget option, have bested the most advanced fighting machine on Earth? The answer was simple and beautiful. It's a lesson that applies to more than just jet fighters. It's a lesson about cleverness over brute force, about not judging a book or a fighter jet by its cover or its price tag. The Gripen's victory was a glorious testament to the power of smart, focused design. The Swedes never set out to build a jet that could do everything. They set out to build a jet that could do exactly what they needed it to do, and do it brilliantly. They needed a fighter that could defend Swedish airspace against a technologically superior foe. That meant it had to be hard to detect, incredibly agile in a dogfight, and equipped with electronic warfare systems that could level the playing field. They didn't weigh it down with vertical landing fans or enormous bomb bays. They kept it lean, mean, and focused. The Gripen is a scalpel, not a sledgehammer, and sometimes a scalpel is far more effective. This story is a glorious wake-up call. We live in a world obsessed with the biggest, the most expensive, the most complicated. We are told that more is always better. The F-35 is the embodiment of that philosophy. But the Gripen stands as a magnificent counterpoint. It whispers a different truth, that ingenuity, efficiency, and a clear sense of purpose can often triumph over sheer brute force spending. It proves that you should never, ever underestimate the underdog. The small, quiet one in the corner might just have the sharpest teeth. So the next time you see a Saab Gripen, don't see a toy. Don't see a budget fighter. See it for what it is, a giant slayer, a masterpiece of pragmatic engineering, and a symbol of Swedish genius. It is a reminder that true power doesn't always come from the biggest explosion or the largest budget. Sometimes it comes from a flash of brilliance. Thanks for watching.